commencement being in just a moment, but thanks for those here in attendance who very well might be listening in or watching in later on or in the gallery, and good afternoon, councillors. As we do meet here today, we meet on the unceded lands of the Palawa people, the original and ongoing owners, and I open today's ordinary meeting at 1 p.m. You may be seated. In opening today's meeting, we do take the attendance and apologies with apology from Councillor Gibson. I have no mayoral acknowledgements here today, but at 3 we have the declarations of interest. So a councillor must declare any interest that the councillor has in any matter before any discussion on that matter commences. Do we have any declarations to be made today? There being none, we'll move forward to the confirmation of minutes at 4.1. Recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the City of Launceston Council held on the 31st of October be confirmed as a true and correct record. Moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Britton. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Council workshops at 5.1. We have the recommendation that Council notes the council workshops conducted and attended since the last council meeting for the purposes described and published as a part of this agenda. Just making a quick little amendment to that, noting that I was not in attendance for those first 3 on the first page as we move forward. So somebody to move with that amendment there. Councillor Britton, seconded by Councillor Harris. Councillor Britton, would you like to speak to any of those? Councillor Harris, anything on workshops? Any conversations around workshops from the table? Okay, there being none, we will look to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We have no councillors' leave of absence or community reports that I see have been identified as a part of this agenda. So we'll move forward to 8, which is public question time. 8.1 is public questions on notice, and they are published as a part of this readily available agenda document. 8.2, we have public questions without notice. Now, noting that the rules and regulations, they're available and displayed upon entry. You may ask a total of 3 questions each. If you please start with your name and suburb. So please, questions without notice.
Hi all, my name is Andrew Lovett. I'm the chair of the Tamer Action Group, and I'm here today to thank the council and the examiner on the interest now being taken on flood protection for Launceston. Little bit of background, my wife and I live on the wrong side of the levee bank. But of course that's not the point. The point is the flood going over the levee bank and really making a wreck of all of Launceston. So just in brief, I'd like to ask one question. When can the flood protection be put in place? My wife and I just bought some new fancy plastic sandbags and they have an expiry date.
Thank you, Mr. Lovett. CEO, any further conversations or comments around implementation and where we're at with the study which Councillor Britton brought forward?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question as well. As I've indicated previously at the previous council meeting, I think as well, we have endorsed a flood mitigation process. We anticipate that could take upwards of 3 years, worst case scenario, but I can assure you that our staff have already started working on what that would look like. And we anticipate actually bringing some further information back to council Q1 of next year as well. So it is certainly a high priority, and I think I even spoke about this last week at the Tamar Valley Leaders Lunch as well, and given the importance that I have around this particular issue as well.
Thank you.
Ian Kinninan, 20 Pine Avenue, Newstead. I too would like to congratulate the council on its initiative to do something about flood mitigation and look forward to the report. Concern is, in the meantime, the preparedness of the residents and how aware they are. And my research shows that very few residents are aware of the dangers they face, particularly the old and disabled. I think it would be handy to have a schedule. It wouldn't be hard of those that have got issues to when a flood's occurring, which door do you knock on, which one don't you knock on to remove those people, and a lot of other initiatives that could be done. I won't go on about those today. The second thing that occurred was that the flood inquiry, federal flood inquiry, I gave evidence of that and pushed a flood app which could appear on our alerts and things like that. And that has come through as recommendation number 63 to go to the federal government, not only for Tasmania but for the whole of Australia. So I think that could be a useful tool in the future. Digressing, just spent 5 weeks in Japan, and I've had 2 other visits there for a similar amount of time. Never on holidays, always looking at business opportunities. And then, to my amazement, I found that actually Launceston's got a sister city in Japan, and the celebration's next year. So I had some ideas from that. I'd like to just share those now, but I'd also like to know that we've got everything well in hand to take something to the Aikido rather than a few stuffed animals. And so a couple of suggestions were that they've got a forestry commission about 4 or 5 times, forestry industry, sorry, 4 or 5 times the size of Tasmania. Apparently they don't cut trees down, they prune them. It'd be interesting to see what else they do there. They've got a recycling system of plastic, the best in the world. I think there can be lessons learned from that. They've also, in my travels and drinking a lot of beer, I was disappointed to find that whiskey's now surpassed sake and beer remains number 3, which is disappointing. But again, we've got a lot of great whiskey distilleries, and it's very difficult to buy Tasmanian whiskey in Japan at the moment. And I wonder if you've got a delegation over there, maybe you take some of the 67 distilleries in Tasmania samples for them to look at and purchase. The other thing that I thought would be very easy for the council to do was I spoke to a lot of Japanese through translation or through pidgin English and things like that, was that a lot of people had been to Australia, not necessarily Tasmania, a lot have been to New Zealand, but there are a lot that were planning trips to Australia. There was nothing really I could give to them about Launceston in Japanese. And I think it'd be great to give the city of Aikido an app in Japanese about Launceston and then about the greater area of Tasmania. Every person, without exception, over there's got a mobile phone. They use them on the trains, they use them everywhere. So if you've got the city that promoted an app on Launceston, then I believe a lot of those visitors that are currently going to the mainland could divert to Tasmania. The other thing, they've had exchange student programs, but I'm looking and thinking about an exchange worker program. Now, they've got 935,000 restaurants in Japan, and they really put out some fantastic product. It would be great if we were able to send 6 or so of our hospitality staff out of different restaurants to Japan for 6 months to work in one of their kitchens, and vice versa, to learn how they prepare food on their requirements and things like that. I was amazed also that last year they had 8.4 million vacant homes. That's now grown to 8.9 million vacant homes. So you drive through the countryside and you see a derelict house and you see a jungle growing through another house and you think, gee, what's happened here? So you do some research and talking about. But actually there's a heap of homes over there, 3, 4, 5 bedroom, that are vacant in really good nick and for sale for $20,000 to $30,000. One guy I spoke to bought a house over there for $23,000, spent $7,000 on it. It's on 460 square metres of land. Spent $7,000 on it, $7,000 more to spend, and he's able to purchase it. Anyone in the world, I believe, allowed to purchase Japanese homes. I researched the cost of electricity and rates and things like that, similar to Australia. It would be a great initiative to have for the Launceston City Council to have a couple of those houses in Aikido. Those that are ratepayers of Launceston could go over there and cut the cost of accommodation. Maybe they could do some renovation at the same time. But for those sort of prices, it could solve a few problems. And I just think that would be a great opportunity to look at. Plastics. Homelessness. We've nearly 125 million people. There's very few homeless. In fact, I don't think you're allowed to be homeless over there. So it'd be interesting to find out behind the scenes at Hokkaido City is how do they solve that problem? What do they do? What can we learn from it? Tourism, they've got 25 million tourists. Australia has 5 million. So I think to be, with the sister city status and the anniversary coming up, it'd be really good to have a working party here, not just with your local staff and aldermen, but probably the wider community. So we could take some presents, like an app, or other useful things that could assist Launceston financially and economically, help the businesses, and in return probably get the opposite. So just a few ideas to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Ginnon. And I can say that the CEO's furiously been taking notes there. So thanks very much, Ian. Thank you. No further questions without notice. Excellent. We'll move forward through the agenda then. Into item number 9. We have 9.1, which is petitions. Petition from Thomas Wickert, Community Pantry, with the recommendation that Council receives the petition regarding the reinstatement of Frida or equivalent Community Pantry in Princess Square, submitted by Thomas and tabled by the CEO. Somebody to receive the report, to move? Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Pentridge. All those in favour? That's all. You don't speak to petitions? We're just receiving it. That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We have another petition here at 9.2. Petition which is from Denise Delphin, which is General Retail and Hire, addition of bottle shop in Invermay Road. The recommendation, again, is to receive the petition regarding general retail and hire, submitted and tabled by the CEO. So somebody to receive? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We don't have any deputations and we're not sitting as planning authority today, so we'll move from 10 and 11 into announcements by the Mayor at 12.1. They're published in the agenda. I'll be looking forward to hearing some announcements from councillors in my absence, including the Deputy Mayor. So we might start with you at 13. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. And the Remembrance Day service was again a very special day, and I think it's just great to see the young people of Launceston and surrounds turning out in numbers to come and support Remembrance Day. I think it's a really great day on the calendar, and to think that we lost 15,000, or no, we sent 15,000 people to World War I out of 146,000, I think, that went from Australia. And Remembrance Day was actually meant to be the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, which was meant to be the signing off of the war that ended all wars. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case, which is a very sad reflection on our society and our world. But having said that, I think to sit and pay homage to those people that have gone out and given their lives to fight for our country and freedom, as we know it, is something very special, and I think it's a really, really, really good day on the calendar. I know, talking to the RSL, that they're so appreciative of the people that do come out and support on that, and it was a really good day of support. The other thing, which is not probably traditionally something I speak about here, is just in relation to last Tuesday, we had City of Launceston UTAS working group, which we had in the shed, which Councillor Harris is a member of, as well as the CEO. We're probably coming to a conclusion, because this is probably about an 8 or 9 year project that was really all about the redevelopment of UTAS in Inveresk, moving it from Newnham. And the shed is pretty much the last of the big builds that they've done. So we've nearly got to the conclusion of that, and I'd have to say that it's been, we started out probably at 20 paces on some issues when this whole thing started. But for the last 6 or 7 years, the relationship between UTAS, Launceston City Council, state government, in relation to how this development has gone on, where we've all listened to each other and the concerns that we've had. We've had a few issues along the way, but we've dealt with them, I think, in a very professional and proactive manner, which has meant that I think that we really have a great outcome. And I think the shed, for those that haven't been down and had a chance to witness, is just another fantastic learning institution. So I think that we will probably change up what that looks like going forward, but I think that given the success that we've had with this working group and the importance of the university as a major educational institution in Launceston, and it really shows us being a university city, that it's something that we need to preserve that relationship, and I think there are still many great things that we can do, and clearly the Newnham part of the puzzle is still unfolding, but there's a number of really positive things that are happening out there, particularly with the the agricultural area that are moving out there, and a number of other developments, and again, defence and so forth, which is sort of still working on some, I think, some planning scheme amendments to enable that to happen, but that then starts to free up some other things in and around the city as well in due course. But I think that the move from UTAS, from where they were to where they are, is proving to be a great success. Clearly, COVID's been in the middle of that, which has created some issues with the students, but I think that they now have facilities, from listening to the members on their future programs, that the number of people that are coming down and viewing what we've got and going wow factor about what we're presenting as a university, I think can only be good for our future university students, not to mention the ability for us to attract students who wouldn't normally have gone to university because of our low educational attainment. Not to say that's the be-all and end-all, but certainly I think that it's certainly much more in people's vision now than it was a few years ago. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm really thankful for the way the university have managed that process through with us in the last few years. So that's about all I want to add.
Excellent. Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. That's better. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, a busy couple of weeks, and I'll work my way back from yesterday. I attended the Livable Places Thriving Communities Health and Wellbeing Forum run by LGAT down in Hobart, where a number of councillors and council staff listened to a number of presenters. I won't go into all that they had. The interesting short feedback from it was that for those communities, those councils that engaged truly with their community, were being told to be bold in their decision making. And that was something they found surprising, because they felt that if they had to close something down or reduce a level of service, that wasn't a problem. The councils were being asked to be bold in our decision making, and communities want to become more self-reliant. So I'll leave that there. I also visited on Monday, or Sunday, into Monday, up to the city of Moreton Bay in Brisbane. That is to the north of Brisbane. It's where Brisbane is expanding to, I guess you would say, a city of some 500,000 people, the third largest local government area in Australia. We went up there as a team. There was a number of council employees. I think there was 9 or 10 of us in the team, looking at the urban planning aspect of it. So there we had a good information session provided by the staff of the city of Moreton Bay. They also then took us on a tour that showed many of the challenges, but also their solutions. Some of the things that they came up with is that the developers help subsidise the development of 4-lane roads rather than leaving it to state or local government. They're the ones who benefit from the land sales, and so they are contributing. And in fact, they are building the 4-lane roads and the traffic lights to make the new suburbs work. So that was one of the interesting things. The other one was in regard to, I guess, housing opportunities. They have a number of what I'll call land leased villages, which have relocatable homes. So because people don't buy the land, they pay a rental, and they have a relocation home. It is a low cost entry into the housing market, something we don't seem to see here in Launceston. Perhaps there's one in Hobart. Also the number of retirement villages and their medium density housing almost seem to need a water view to succeed financially. So that was their feedback on that. I also attended the Franklin House Committee meeting on the 6th of November. The 6th of November I was at the lunch where the CEO spoke to the Tama Valley Leaders Lunch, and those present at the lunch, I think I was the only councillor there, certainly the feedback I got was that people really enjoyed the message that the CEO brought, the enthusiasm, and they look forward to what he will deliver over the next few years. So they were excited. As Councillor Mackenzie said, I was also at the working group with UTAS, and interesting that they have actually started, I think, the occupational therapy university students have actually started in the building today, or last week, and so they are already on site. The rest of the medical will in fact move down into the term 1 of 2025. So by 2025, that whole site should be activated, which will see a lot more people in our city. And finally, I had the perhaps misfortune or otherwise to also attend the Jack Jumpers game up at the Silverdome when they played South East Melbourne Phoenix and managed to still throw away a half-time lead, but does show the need for our city to have a basketball stadium because the place was packed and certainly there you could not get a seat without having a membership, as I have. So with that, I'll close. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. On Sunday the 3rd of November, I attended the Diwali celebrations at the Somerdale School Hall, along with Professor Raze and many local councillors from the Meander Valley, and also Rob Fairs MP was there. And it was celebrating good over evil, light over darkness, and it was such an amazing day, full of colour and light, where they pay respect to their faith. And it was about 200 community members there. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for the organisers. One of our very own council officers, Dev, was one of the key organisers for that. On Monday, along with the Deputy Mayor and Councillor McMahon, I also attended Remembrance Day, along with many community members, school children, local members, state and federal politicians were there, paying our respects to those men and women that paid the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. And I'd just like to say, every day we shall remember them. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Palmer. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor. On Sunday the 27th of October, I attended the Soroptimist International Launceston High Tea annual fundraiser with around 70 women in attendance, and it was fully catered for by the Soroptimist members. A total of $4,824 was raised and shared equally between Women's Legal Service TAS and Days for Girls. And just another thing that I would like to mention, outside of my councillor role, I'm on the Benevolent Society Fundraising Committee, and we held our annual fundraiser at the Country Club last Saturday night. And through the amazing support and generosity of those in our local community, while we don't quite have our final figure yet, we expect to have raised over $100,000, which will make a huge difference in the lives of those in our community in need of assistance. And while I have the opportunity to speak, I would also like to congratulate Launceston City Council for formally adopting the Statement of Commitment to the Safety of Children and Young People. I would like to acknowledge Councillor Dawkins for bringing the motion to Council. Without Councillor Dawkins taking on that responsibility and being the voice to push it forward, we would not be celebrating this significant step forward in protecting children and young people in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kai.
On November 11th, I also attended the Remembrance Day service at the Launceston Cenotaph with Deputy Mayor Mackenzie, Councillor McMahon and Councillor Palmer to honour the soldiers who fought for our freedom. We will remember them, lest we forget. On the 12th, I attended the final citizenship ceremony for 2024 alongside Mayor Garwood. We welcomed 79 conferees from various countries around the world. It is a privilege to be part of this significant and exciting day for our new Australian citizens. Congratulations and welcome. Thank you for choosing to make Australia your home and for enriching our diverse community with your unique cultural backgrounds. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the Launceston Tramway Museum for gifting all our conferees a free family pass to experience the heritage trams. I would also like to take this opportunity to provide an update on the Heritage Sketch competition organised by the Heritage Advisory Committee. We are absolutely delighted with the response this year, having received over 300 entries. The panel is currently judging all the submissions as we speak over at the library. For those interested in viewing the amazing artworks, they are displayed in the library window, and many people have stopped to appreciate the work of our young artists. We look forward to announcing the winners on the 25th of this month, which is a Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kai. Councillor Professor Raze.
Oh, nice. I Yeah, as Councillor Palmer mentioned, yes, I enjoy attending the Diwali festival and share the BIPS Swaminarayan Hindu community festival, and it was great to see it. It was like community where you could see the young and old all sitting together and share meal together as well. I also this week attended the International Survival Day, recognizing and commemorating the courage and journeys of survivors of sexual assault and sexual abuse and their supporter, and also whistleblowers across Australia. I have also attended the Neil Golan Memorial Lecture by Professor Richard Scholars, who is 2024 Australian of the Year, who shared with us his research into the management of melanoma, and he also shared with us his personal journey as he suffers from cancer as well. And he also launched his book called Brainstorm in Launceston on Tuesday. And of course, I am launching my book tomorrow night as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Any further community reports from councillors? Okay, moving forward to questions by councillors. So at 14.1, councillors' questions on notice, they're published as a part of this agenda. So moving forward to 14.2, councillors' questions without notice. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask what steps are being taken to understand the details that do surround the council officer actions associated with any payments made to or on behalf of Councillor Gibson.
CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Walker, for your question. I'm mindful of some confidentiality provisions that do sit around what is currently being worked on, so I don't think it appropriate or don't feel comfortable certainly discussing that in a public arena, but I can assure you that there are appropriate processes respecting probity of all situations, and further information will be coming forward to Council, hopefully in December.
Thank you. Can you explain what is the what provisions are there that would allow this reimbursement or payment to be made on behalf of a councillor?
CEO.
I assume, Councillor Walker, you're referring to the newspaper articles that have been aired in the last week in relation to two payments that have been discovered paid to a particular councillor. Again, without breaching any legal privilege and confidentiality of the processes underway, it is anticipated that the report that will come more than likely to a closed council session will detail options available to council as well as the history.
I suppose I meant what, like in the Local Government Act, are there any provisions for payments such as these to be made? In a general sense.
To answer more broadly, Councillor Walker, delegations would be the appropriate place for that to occur. I am of the view that delegations are not in place for such payments to occur. However, such payments are likely or should occur by the council itself if it should choose to.
Then finally, will the Mayor and the CEO commit to a robust, open, full and frank forensic independent investigation or audit into the payments made and seek any recommendations to ensure that this is fully understood and potentially that it does not happen again?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'm certainly happy to work with you or any of your colleagues in relation to a specific motion on notice that would actually outline the scope of any particular audit. But what I can share is that as a result of what we are working through at present, we are looking at system and process enhancements, of which will include some policy changes and potentially the inclusion of new policies for council to consider, which will also display any payments made to any councillor, including what's entitled under the Act, far more transparent than what it currently is, also reflecting some of the changes that were proposed by the state government through their local government reform process.
Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions from councillors without notice? Okay, there being none, we'll move forward through to item 15 and 16. So we have no notices of motion or committee reports identified as a part of this agenda. So at 17, we have Community and Place Network. 17.1 is the Launceston Local Housing Strategy Update, with that recommendation being that Council notes the content of the report, providing an update on commencement of drafting a local housing strategy that will outline long-term dwelling growth within the City of Launceston municipality. Somebody to move the recommendation. Being moved by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Yes, this is simply a report to note that Launceston housing strategy and the process under which it's going through is being updated, and it does, I guess, help us given some background. We all know that housing availability and is not only throughout this community, throughout Australia, in fact throughout the world. So it isn't a unique problem to us, but this report will hopefully help us provide some of those areas that we will grow into, different types of housing and things like that. So this is really just the start of what will be a long process, and look forward to seeing it when it's been completed.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Anything further to add as the seconder? Any comments around the table? Nothing further to close. So putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? That is all councillors who are present. The motion is carried. There's nothing in agenda item number 18 at the moment that's been identified as a part of this agenda with Creative Arts and Cultural Services. So we'll move into 19, which is the Infrastructure and Assets Network. 19.1 has actually been removed from the agenda. It's been pulled, but it will be brought forward through into a late notice item. So just being very clear that the transfer of York Park Stadium to Stadium Tasmania will be brought forward in a later agenda item. So we'll move forward from that into 20, which is Organisational Services Network. 20.1 is the lease of the Lilydale Bowls Club, with the recommendation being that Council approves to lease land at 8 Cherub Avenue and 10 to 12 Avenue Lilydale to the Lilydale Bowls Club. Somebody to move. Councillor Palmer. Seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Since 2010, as stated in the report, the Lilydale Bowls Club has served as a vibrant community hub, offering a venue for events, bowling and local meetings. With a current membership of 49, the club welcomed 8 new members over the past year. The club leased the land while owning the clubhouse. As a regular visitor to Lilydale, I can speak really highly of the Bowls Club and say to my fellow councillors that the Bowls Club do an amazing job for the local community. They're heavily involved with all the different community events that go on in Lilydale. They offer assistance where possible. For example, the carols that have been reignited, the Bowls Club have opened up the Bowls Club for use for the carols committee to use as they see fit. And basically we're being asked for a further 5 years to have the Bowls Club there on the lease. So I would say to my fellow councillors, let's lock it in and get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. As the second, Councillor Pentridge.
Look, I'd like to acknowledge that Councillor Palmer has done a tremendous amount of work at Lilydale. I think I know he's got my 100% support, and I'm quite sure that he'll have the rest of this council's support. It is a long way up there. I probably couldn't find my way back if I went out there on a regular basis. But they've done a great job out there. It's nice to see that Lilydale has been brought into our community, and I think we need to keep doing things when required.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. Any further comments around the table or anything further to close? Okay, put it to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Moving to now 20.2, we have notice period for annual general meeting submissions policy. The recommendation is that Council approves the notice period for annual general meeting submissions policy as published in this agenda. Somebody to move. Deputy Mayor has moved. Seconded. Councillor Pentridge. Deputy Mayor.
I think it's just really amending something to make sure that it's now clear on how people can make their submissions in a timely manner.
Sure. Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Pentridge? Anything around the table? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? All councillors present? That motion is carried also. We don't have anything identified as the Chief Executive Officer Network at 21. So 22 is late items, which I'll just grab. It's quite an extensive document, which has now become the University of Tasmania transfer to Stadiums Tasmania. So you didn't have to wait too long. So we'll just move through the paperwork to the recommendation. And there is an additional recommendation that has come in as of this morning, hence this being moved to a couple of items later. So it does say here that the recommendation is that Council, by absolute majority and pursuant to Regulation 8 of the Local Government Meetings Procedures Regulations, determines to deal with item 22.2. So that's why it's been changed. So we're just saying, yes, we are acknowledging it's been pulled and it's been put in here. And that it also notes the advice from the CEO in respect of the reason it was not possible to include this in the item agenda. So that being said, we don't have to accept that though, do we? We just move forward to the actual recommendation now of the item. Or we do accept it? Okay, so accepting the reason why it was pulled and put in here, moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dawkins. All those in favour? All councillors present. The motion is carried, which means we can now deal with the item at 22.2. And that is that the decision statement is to consider the approval of transfer of York Park to Stadiums Tasmania, excluding Elizabeth Gardens and Invermay Park, with the additional recommendation to be worded as, in recognition of the City of Launceston transferring York Park to Stadiums Tasmania for the nominal consideration of only $1, the Tasmanian Government commits to providing the City of Launceston with $1.5 million per annum to be used for site activation. Somebody to move. Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I stand, probably slightly shaggy dog story, but I stand here and most of you know that I've been out and had knee surgery about 2 weeks ago, and I was just reflecting on that knee surgery last night, and I realised that the cause of that knee surgery was me running down the wing in 1980 on York Park. And just, I think it's relevant because when I was doing that in 1980, York Park had a very small grandstand, very similar to what we have the NTCA ground. It had a great hedge at the northern end and very much a suburban football oval. What we found over the last 30 or 40 years, 46 years, things have changed out at York Park, and over time there have been investment decisions made which has continued to develop and evolve the University of Tasmania Stadium, also known as York Park, in its formative years, to an extent now that it's actually designed for higher level activity than just local football, and which is basically what it was for when I played back in the 1970s, 80s. I think over time, and that money has largely been invested by one level of government or other, being state or federal. So a large part of the capital value of that asset has actually been created by grants made to us by by state and federal governments. And as we're aware, there's another 65 million, 60 million, 70 million that's about to be spent out there as we speak in relation to further developments of that oval to continue to evolve it as a stadium which can attract significant events. It's well known that the actual operational costs to the Launceston City Council are in excess of $4 million, and by the time this development is completed, that'll go upwards to about $7 million a year. Stadiums Tasmania was formed 2 to 3 years ago with a view to taking on major stadia in and around Tasmania to make sure that they extracted the greatest amount of value from stadiums in Tasmania and ensuring the economic benefits to Tasmania were exploited to the best possible with the assets that they had available. They bring with them a level of expertise that we as a local council do not possess, and without spending lots and lots of money, we will not possess into the future. And if we did decide to do this, we would probably be taking that bold risk that Councillor Harris was talking about by employing more people to enable us to do that. The question is, would that really make a difference? The trouble is we don't sit on a stadia hierarchy within Australia. and to be sitting in within Stadium Tasmania, it also puts that stadium in a different hierarchy, and the ability for us to contest for events and things like that is further enhanced. And that was demonstrated from a trip that we did last year to Cardinia Park in Geelong, where they transferred from the local council through to a stadiums trust to enable them to develop and evolve. And there have been a number of things and enhancements that have occurred as a result of Cardinia Park turning into a trust. So to me, this is a no-brainer. I appreciate this is a local asset. I see it still being a local asset. It's going to be managed by the state government as opposed to us. There are lots of state government assets which are managed for our local community now in and around our city. For example, the Silverdome, that's available for community. So I don't see significantly a change other than a professional, and this is no disrespect to Robert Grunewagen and his team out at York Park. I sat as the chair of York Park and Inverest Precinct a number of years ago, and their ability was to host events and do things that as they came in, and with a limited capacity, they had to sort of make sure they've done, and they've done a fantastic job in the events that we've hosted out over there a number of years. The benefit of us doing what I hope we're going to do today is we're going to put this into a really professional environment which can actually take our stadium further forward. The opportunities are to continue with the content that we've currently got. Clearly, the things will change in the next 2 or 3 years with the advent of the Tasmanian football team, which hopefully will deliver more content to UTAS Stadium rather than less content. I know there have been fears about what might happen because of the stadium being built in Hobart. To be honest, that's an irrelevant conversation, because at the end of the day, Launceston's got York Park, and it is the only asset that can be dealt with. If we own it and the stadium's built in Hobart, we'll still be competing with the stadium in Hobart. If you look at the major events that come to Launceston now, the only way they come here is by the auspices of the state government assisting us in that. I have no doubt that that will continue to be done in that way, but from my perspective, with the professionalism which I know that Stadiums Tasmania bring to the table, by moving this from here to them, I think can only enhance the value of that asset that we've got. Now, I just wanted to, and I say the reasons are in there. I would like an extension, thank you.
Okay, somebody to move the extension? Do we have to do that? Yeah.
7, 8, 9.
Moved by Councillor Pentridge, seconded by Councillor Britton. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried.
Through the process, we've negotiated where at one stage we looked like we were going to be needing to make contributions to Stadiums Tasmania on an annual basis, and that was when Invermay Park and Elizabeth Gardens were being transferred as part of that. Throughout the negotiations that have gone on, we've determined that we will take back Invermay Park and Elizabeth Gardens, and I think that makes eminent sense for Launceston because they are community ovals, community facilities, which I think are more appropriately dealt with by us, and therefore we have control over the local content that goes on and out of that. When you look at the local content that happens on York Park, it's not that significant. There's a consent agreement which suggests that will continue on a rebated basis at least for the next 3 years and then be reviewed. But we have North Launceston Football Club playing their games there in the TSL. I think the NTGAFA play their grand finals, the NTFA play their grand finals. There are a couple of other community groups that use it for minor things. So therefore, the significance of our local content has actually diminished over the years with the increase of the status of the stadium. So I just want to finish by saying that I think that we're actually going to get a much better deal out of what we're about to hopefully vote in favour for. And I'm very confident that we've worked really hard and diligently to get the best deal that we can for Launceston. I just wanted to throw over to the CEO, just in relation to a hot off the press late item in regards to additional support from the state government. So I might just ask for Mr Johnson to speak to that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And as printed up on the screen, and apologies that it is a later recommendation, and I would suggest some couple of finessing of 2 words, if that is also okay with the mover and the seconder as well at the end. But essentially how this has come about is through some last minute but very proactive and robust discussions with the state government in relation to the transfer, and of course honouring the transfer and what it will look like moving forward. So the way in which this has been worded, it is not done on a conditional basis. It's not binding also on council or the state government, but certainly the conversations I've had with senior representatives of state government as early as mid-morning this morning, there is certainly a genuine commitment from people within the Premier's office and the Minister's office to work with Council and work broadly with the community to make sure that the transfer goes smoothly, and importantly that the asset is well invested, not only for the upgrades but of course for the activation and ongoing use of York Park or UTAS Stadium moving forward as well. So it was suggested and agreed between myself and representatives of the government this morning to put these words in here, so it should be of no surprise to the government that these words are being considered by you today here in a public manner. But also I reiterate there is no guarantee that there will be a $1.5 million contribution coming thereafter. If I may, through the chair, just request the mover and the seconder, just some finessing, and I apologise for the lateness of it, but in reading this on the screen, in terms of wording, I would suggest the word request goes at the beginning. So when you follow it from the very beginning where it says that council should be request in recognition of the City of Launceston, etc. And then after the word consideration of $1, comma, the word that is inserted, so that the Tasmanian Government commits to providing the City of Launceston a $1.5 million per annum. And again, a further suggestion per annum to be used and the word only be inserted, be used only for site activation. I think that would also give some greater comfort to the State Government that this is generally going to be used for the activation of the site and also to support Stadiums Tasmania.
As mover, I'm very happy with that.
Great, thank you. Now that we've got that clarification as well, I am going to go to public comment around this one as well, now that we've done that confirmation. Thank you,
Mayor.
James.
James Avery, CEO, Stadiums Tasmania. Thanks again for your time. As you're all aware, it's taken a little while to get to today's decision around the transfer of York Park or UTAS Stadium, and fundamentally that's because this is a very important community asset that we're all invested in. As far as Stadiums Tasmania is concerned, we're committed to working with you to take the venue to the next phase of its life cycle, one that sees it flourish through increased investment, attracting more events and providing greater opportunities for the wider community. Council resolved back in February this year to approve the transfer pending agreement of a consent deed. That consent deed has been produced and agreed by Stadiums Tasmania and the City of Launceston's management team. We believe the consent deed and the other associated documentation reflects the needs of Council and shows we have listened to you at every step of the way. It also provides a roadmap as to how Stadiums Tasmania will work with you to get the best out of the venue going forward. We have detailed our strategy to deliver more content to the venue, working with local and national sporting codes, live entertainment and event promoters, business event providers and government agencies to ensure the venue continues to be a public asset the Launceston community can be proud of and one that stimulates significant economic activity. As you know, and as we've outlined on several occasions previously, Stadiums Tasmania has a dual statutory commitment to driving significant commercial outcomes whilst also ensuring the community's needs are being met. The important issue of community access is clearly dealt with in these agreements, as are Council's other priorities that you have raised with us several times over the past 2 years. We know it is not financially sustainable for Council to continue to own and operate the venue, which is why Council itself first initiated this transfer in 2019. Indeed, Council's own modelling shows that the average cost for the Inverest precinct would represent a saving to Council of approximately 6.3% in terms of rates, which could be reinvested into other Council services. Following completion of the $130 million upgrade of the venue, Council's modelling shows annual depreciation and operational maintenance costs would result in a rate rise of 7.2%. Today, stadium development and management is a highly competitive, highly skilled, nuanced industry. It requires specific skill sets and experience, which is what Stadiums Tasmania possesses. This is what we do, but we must do it together with you. The establishment of a joint advisory and consultation committee between Stadiums Tasmania and the City of Launceston is one step, but there are many others we intend to implement with you. So after Council first arrived at a decision to transfer the venue back in 2019, which was again supported in February this year, we are now at the point today where that decision can finally be acted upon. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, James, for those words. Doesn't leave a lot for us to talk about. I guess from my point of view, this is something that I've been supportive of, but also pushed pretty hard to make sure that Launceston gets the best possible deal that it can. However, at the end of the day, we have to consider that councils, a local council, shouldn't hold a regional service that should be provided by the next level of government, and that is the state government. We, for example, don't own the LGH that is provided by the Department of Health through the state government for all northern Tasmanians. And that, in that way, York Park has now evolved from being the suburban football ground that Councillor Mackenzie raced up and down the wing on, and I think I might have played a bit of athletic carnivals at high school, was run around there. Perhaps you could bring that back, James. It was always good fun for the inter-high. But we don't, and we cannot afford to own a Tier 2 stadium in just this local council area. It belongs at the next level of government, and that's the state government, and their means to do that is through Stadiums Tasmania. This is a stadium for all of northern Tasmania, and in fact all of Tasmania. And I'm sure as many people went to Hobart as I did in the last few days to see Cold Chisel, many people from Hobart will come north in 2028 to see the Tasmania Devils play at what we call York Park or UTAS Stadium. By then it will have had its $130 million renovation. The seating would have been expanded by more than 2,000 seats. And by the very nature of it, that will be good for this city, bringing all those people into the city to spend the money. They don't just travel and go. I can tell you, took my wife to Hobart. She did some shopping, helped the economy down there. We had dinner, we had breakfast, we stayed in a hotel. All of those things adds to what happens here once we have the stadium activated and we have the Tassie Devils team. But even before we get the Tassie Devils team, we are lucky to have the Hawthorn Football Club come and play 4 games here. But in addition to that, we'll also have the Tassie Devils VFL team commencing from 2026, as well as the AFLW teams. And, of course, North Launceston playing in the revised Premier League of the Northern Tasmanian Football Association from next year. So I want to reach out to the North Launceston members, their committee and chair, to say, come and talk to Stadiums Tasmania, because obviously they are the ones that are being most displaced by the changes that will be made to the stadium. But we, as a council, will make sure that you are being looked after by Stadiums Tasmania so that you do have a place to call home, and particularly in the very short term, which of next year. But whether that remains your home into the future, only the future will tell. But I would love to see local football being played on York Park as it once was when I was a boy, sitting up in that hedge, which was always a good way to gain free access to a game when there were 6 clubs there. And so I guess, James, we look forward to finding ways that that local football content can be brought to York Park on a very regular basis. So I'm very happy to support and call on my fellow councillors to support this same motion.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. It's time to welcome a $130 million investment into our city. A $130 million investment into small business, restaurants, cafes, hotels, motels, Airbnb. A $130 million investment into the future of our city and generations to come. Think about the incredible impact this will have on our tourism and hospitality, not to mention an increase in health and well-being, Professor Raze. The facts: this is a $130 million investment into our city, into our community. UTAS has been incurring, and I know that the Deputy Mayor has touched on this, and James from Stadiums Tasmania, but I think it's really important that we get this point across. UTAS has been incurring an average operations loss of $4.21 million per year. And we also know this is forecast to increase to an average of $5.51 million per year for the next 5 years. This operating loss does not include required capital costs of $10.3 million minimum over the next 5 years to maintain minimum standards and compliance, and therefore host events and content. Example, AFL, AFLW, BBL, Rugby Union, Rugby League, soccer, concerts, business events, and it goes on. No one can say there hasn't been extensive community and stakeholder engagement. I say thank you very much to my fellow councillors for digging deep and asking the questions, and therefore making sure we, the community of Launceston and our surrounding communities, get the very best outcome for our city. And I honestly believe we have the best outcome for our city. Thank you to Stadiums Tasmania, to the state government for countless workshops we've had, and there has been quite a few. Thank you to our community for your feedback. We have listened. Thank you to our council officers for the years that you've put into this. And another take I've got on this. Can I ask what it looks like if we don't vote in favour of this today? In my opinion, it doesn't look good at all. What will we gain? We'll gain nothing if we vote against it. What does this look like? Not very good. Where is the win for our city? There simply isn't one. Nobody can show me the downside of accepting this today. I can only see the upside of this, and the vibrancy of our city is about to come alive. Tell me how our small businesses benefit from voting against this today. Tell me how children, and your children, my children, and our grandchildren benefit if we vote against this today. What an opportunity this is, to have a state-of-the-art venue, one of the best in the country right here in our city. It's time to invest in our city. This isn't about us, it's about our children, my children, our grandchildren, Councillor Pentridge, generations to come. It's time to make a decision and get on with this. A $130 investment in our million, a $130 million investment in our city. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Professor Raze.
Well, thank you. I have to respond to that now. Well, first, I would like to state that I am not against change, AFL developments, nor having professional body such as Stadium Tasmania. And I do really respect you, and I think you are the right board to run our stadium. However, I have really great reservation about the wisdom of transferring the ownership of the stadium to Stadium Australia. One of my concerns is that the council and the community will have less influence on overall management and development of the stadium in the future. We should look at the history why we are meeting today trying to transfer the ownership of the stadium. It goes back to 2019 when the KPMG conducted study, and their conclusion was the stadium is currently a net financial burden on the council, and that the council is not in a position to be able to make significant capital upgrade on the venue. Well, how can it be burden when the $3 to $5 million has generated in excess of $30 million in visitor spending annually? Don't you think it has been a great investment for Northern Tasmania? History suggests that the council has been very successful, and the community, in raising significant investment and upgrades since the establishment of the stadium in 2016. And even now, as you have confirmed, we have $130 million investment from state and federal government. I believe that keeping the ownership of the stadium will probably make it more likely to continue to raise funding and investment in the future. It has been also stated that the intention is to centralize ownership and management and capital development of state public stadiums under a single entity with the whole state perspectives. History suggests that this might not be the best model in Tasmania, and it might disadvantage the north of the state. In the north, we have been very successful in our business model, generating the economic boom. But more importantly, look at the stadium attendance, 16,000 regular attended. That's double the number attended in the south. There is also danger that this will be compromised with the new management. For example, they might promote more and better game in the south to make their investment viable, which will starve the north with the loss of activity and expenditures for decades. We have to remember, historically, Tasmanian government intention was to make the north the center of football, and the south is the center for cricket. That was very fair, equitable, and it was successful because they found that it's for the whole Tasmania. The change in the arrangement, therefore, it might compromise that. And may I say, if we are going to go to centralized sport, we should, in the future also, we might say, why don't we have more cricket games in the north too? And I think that's very important and valid argument. Now, the statement regarding the future contents of the stadium to outline commitment, it stated that the government intention, and that's important, the government intention is to have 4 Tassie Devils AFL matches played in Launceston, and that the government expectations to have AFL women games played in Launceston. I am not a lawyer, but do you think these words, intentions, great expectation, does it really reassure us and give us really a firm commitment regarding the future of our stadium? Now, I think, again, I respect the state of Tasmanian, and I think they will do a great job. But I feel we have to be alert and active in protecting this statement because it is not for the council, it is for the community. And we are not really in a position to sell it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Raze. A question, Councillor Walker.
More than one, if I may, Chair. This parcel of land is public land. That's a particular type of category of land that council owns, i.e. land that is used by the public quite often. It's sporting or cultural facility land. What are the conditions that need to be met when disposing of public land, and have we met those conditions? As according to the Local Government Act, I think, or LUPA.
Team Leader, Legal Services, Duncan.
Thanks for the question. So it's the mechanisms under the Local Government Act, Section 178, specifies what's required to be met. Public notification going in the paper twice. You have to put up signs around the boundaries, opposite roads. So we did that. That was towards the end of 2023. We had 3 objections which were brought back to council and then considered on the 8th of February.
And do we have legal advice that suggests that doing that 12 months ago and now with a different, I suppose, dimensions of the land and different conditions associated with that, that comfortably covers us for this disposal 12 months later?
Yep, I'm comfortable that the requirements of that section have been met.
Remember where I'm going here. The plans have changed, and we don't have an exact survey of the land that's being disposed. Is that at all a concern in this decision today?
That's not a concern to me. The recommendations clearly identify the outline of the land, which is less than what was publicly advertised and consulted upon. It's quite normal for when you buy off the plan. This is quite similar. Conveyancing private, that there might be slight variations. So the way that the recommendations have been written is to make account for those minor changes that might be required.
What provisions have been made to maintain what council has had, which is a 2-tiered approach to charges associated with the ground, a lower one for community users and a higher one for other external users? What provisions have been made for that to continue? if this is to be transferred today?
So the transfer is to occur in accordance with the consent deed, but also a cooperation agreement, which will run to the end of August of 2028. Stadiums TAS under that agreement are obligated to maintain local prices. There's a mechanism allowing them to increase the prices by the lesser of CPI or 5% annually.
And that cooperation agreement, as you say, has terms attached to it. One of that is being the expiry of that in 2028. Does that mean the entire contents of the cooperation agreement will expire in 2028? And could it be that the $1.5 million that has been touted today could be part of that cooperation agreement and therefore also expire in 4 years' time?
I wasn't privy to the discussions that Sam had, but I just want to be clear that agreement does finish on at the end of August of 2028. There's nothing stopping the council or a future council entering into a similar agreement, a different one entirely, or to not enter into an agreement. So that would be a prerogative of the council to make that decision at the time.
Could I get some clarity around that, CEO, if possible, that the potential commitment by the state government to co-contribute towards council activating the site may well end up being a part of the cooperation agreement and therefore, like other things in the cooperation agreement, expire in 2028.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. The matters as they are presented sit separate to each other, so the cooperation agreement is as presented and as discussed previously at the workshop. The $1.5 million obviously being a late start to the party, pardon the pun, is separate to the cooperation agreement. Also going back to my comments as made at the opening of when this recommendation was moved, there is no guarantee from either party around the $1.5 million. The cooperation agreement, however, should it be endorsed by council, does have that guarantee.
There is some concern around associated users, especially North Launceston Football Club, I suppose, has had a favourable arrangement with council insofar as that they've had club rooms and associated activities there that are profit-making for them, sale of food and alcohol. What provisions have been made for North Launceston Football Club, either by Launceston Council or by Stadiums Tasmania in this agreement?
So the transfer of land is subject to the existing leases that are on the site. So the change of ownership from council into Stadiums Tasmania does not affect any existing lease that is in effect.
I know it's been mentioned that in the future the northern stand may well be developed, and that does generally adhere to the southern boundary of Invermay Park. What provisions, allowances, arrangements could be in place in the agreement where the development there could enhance Invermay Park, or could have, how could we have input into the development? I suppose that's an example, but furthermore, developments into the future, whether it be other commercial activities, cafes, gyms, restaurants, whatever it might be. Considering that the land now will border, I suppose what you call the spine in Inverest, the southern side of Invermay Park, and of course the northern side of what used to be known as the bike track, which belongs to council as well.
So the cooperation agreement has sets up an advisory panel of which the City of Launceston is entitled to have 3 representatives. So that's a matter that could be brought to the attention of Stadiums TAS in a formal capacity.
And do we have any further information on who would be on that advisory panel, both from Launceston Council and other members of that advisory panel?
Cooperation agreement doesn't specify, so that'd be a matter for the elected council and the Chief Executive Officer.
Your Honour. That's what it sounded like, didn't it? Well done. Thank you,
Thank
Duncan.
you. No further questions.
Any further comments that I've missed around the table or any further questions to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for those answers, and thank you for all the work that has been done on behalf of Launceston City Council. It has been a long journey. It's dominated my time on council, and I thought I'd been here a long time, but apparently these things move very slowly. Whilst there's been some recent changes there, of course, we can go back a little bit further than that, back to 1874. Just happens to be 150 years ago on that very spot. There used to be a waste facility for Launceston, a dumping point, landfill, whatever you'd like to call it. It became Launceston Showground in 1874, and that was the beginning of that journey for Launceston, of that being a public space. So it's a long and potted history, you might say, but it's certainly hosted cricket matches, it hosted other sports, and then, of course, football matches in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and famously in the 1960s was the site where Tasmania defeated Victoria in men's senior football, with a crowd of about 15,000 people, apparently, about the same as what we get now, really. But in those days, of course, yes, it did have the cycle track around it. It had the cycle track on the southern side of it. People, up until nearly 2000, could park their cars around the boundary and toot their horn and flash their lights when a goal was kicked. So really that more recent history, you can see, has changed a lot in the last 25 years. We've gone from when the member for Bass, Warwick Smith, went and got some money, even though he lost his seat federally, was successful in getting some money to do some work at the grounds and getting a stadium built, to a fire at the Northern Terrace stand, I think in about 2008, and I think that's the one we may have moved to Invermay Park. So, many and varied history, and certainly in that last 25 years, like I say, that accelerated history, and I can appreciate that this is a part of that history now. This is another accelerating moment for the ground. My concern does go similarly through you, Chair, Councillor Razzay's concerns about the community content and the community facility. Of course, it was built as Launceston's home of sport, the heartland of sport in Launceston, and it should always remain that. That's the thing that we need to capture and contain and to continue. I think we can do that with the adjunct of facilities around the site, if we can have that contribution and that interaction. And yes, we should be doing it together, and I thank Mr Avery for that comment that we should be doing this for Tasmania, but it has felt at times as though we are not doing this together. It has felt at times as though we have been dictated to, the terms, the conditions. Indeed, we're still being told by the state government that we can't afford to run this, even though we managed to do it for 150 years, we can no longer do it. We're being told if we do try and do that, that no money will be available for the redevelopment. We'll have to borrow that money ourselves. I don't know how you describe that. I could think of some words, but they're not complementary. We should be doing it together. This should be today a unanimous decision around this table, and yet I fear it won't be, because there are still unanswered questions. There are still areas of concern that go towards Launceston's ability to have control and have say in its own destiny. Tasmania is full of communities that have their points of difference, that have their different focuses and their different ways of doing things, and yet this is a time where Tasmania is coming together to develop a state team, something that everyone welcomes. It should also be something that everyone finds a path forward together to agree upon. And I suppose you could say this process has been that, trying to negotiate that. I just don't think, and an example being the late inclusion of point 9 on that list is an example of the fact that it's a rushed, forced decision that we face today. It should never have been that way. It should have been something that we wholeheartedly supported and agreed with, and I will ask for an extension if I may, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. So looking for somebody to move. It's been moved by Councillor Pentridge, seconded by Councillor Kai. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried.
Thank you. This is the one chance we get to reiterate this point. This is the heartland of Launceston's sporting culture, its sporting history. There may be new spaces. NTCA ground is earmarked for development. Invermay Park adjacent to it, which we have negotiated to keep that separate from this deal. And in saying that, I do congratulate councillors, and I include myself in that, of having negotiated to this point. The deal has changed quite a lot over the last 8 to 12 months. And yet, here we stand, just looking for what connection we can continue to maintain with our ground. And I suppose that, for me, is the difficult point where I feel as though, as a community, we'll always consider it ours. And I know the example of the Silverdome came up. Well, that's probably not a good example of state government ownership, considering it's that empty and unused, like a deserted town for years and years, to the point where the state government was trying to foist it onto Launceston Council to maintain and to own. So these things don't always work out the way that they're intended. Now, that's changed and that's turned around, and that's great. I think that is going to be included as part of Stadiums Tasmania. And I wish that venture all the success in the world, and I hope that everything that has been talked about comes to fruition. And I wish the best for football, the future of football in Tasmania, the stability of it and the growth of it, and of other uses for that ground. But today, I will take credit for the gains that we have got in negotiating this deal, but I will not be supporting this decision, which I still feel is rushed and feel as though, and necessarily so, there's a timeline that doesn't necessarily sit with us, where things have to be developed. And I had wished that this had been handled differently, that it had been more of a collaboration from the get-go, rather than this negotiated process. And I'm always taught that your best ability to negotiate, or your best option in a negotiation, is your ability to walk away from a deal. And at this moment, the state government definitely rely upon having York Park as part of their plans for AFL Future in Tasmania, and that's fine. We also would like to have that financial assistance and to see the ground grow. There should be no reason why those two can't come together in a more holistic way with unanimous support around this table. So I wish it all the best. I hope it's a roaring success, and we shall see what the future brings. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I've been lucky enough to have been served a few quotes and anecdotes in my time on council, so I'm going to use a couple of them now. I'd like you all to imagine a turtle sitting on top of a fence, and I'll move on. We were elected to make the best decisions for Launceston. That's why I'm here. That's why I believe everyone's here. It's very easy to criticise something and not come up with the solution to the problem. And I think that whilst I respect all the views around the table, this is the best solution to the problem that we have with UTAS Stadium. It's not on any of us to continue to hold on to this asset out of pride or out of a sense of unknown, well, that's what's going to happen. I mean, and here's the second cliche I was going to use. If we were all sitting around here trying to vote on who we would get to drive a boat from here to America, we would pick someone who'd driven a boat and a captain of a ship. If we were voting on who we would get to pilot a plane, we would most likely fall on a pilot. If we were voting to see who was going to manage a $90 million stadium and who was going to do the best job, my vote would probably go to Stadiums Tas. Now, the economic benefits are obviously huge. One thing I think everyone forgets is that we need this to remain as a Tier 2 stadium. We cannot afford to keep it at a Tier 2 stadium. So we can talk about $30 million, $40 million, whatever, in 5 years, 10 years. That may be zilch, and whoever can go and play whatever they want on it at that time. Now, I believe it's absolutely fundamental that we hand over this stadium to Stadiums Tas. As I said, I don't think anyone has a better option. And if you think of the turtle on the fence, you can't get angry at it for being there. It didn't get there itself. Okay? And I think if we don't hand over this stadium today, in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, someone's going to look back at us on this table and ask, why did you put that stadium on the fence? Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. Councillor McMahon.
I'd like to move that the motion be put. Thank you.
Okay. Somebody to second? There's almost as many hands to second. Councillor Britton. All those in favour? Means we stop talking about it and we vote on it. I don't think there's anybody left to talk anyway, but... No, we're not voting on that just yet, Joe. This is to cut the talking. That's what I was going to say too, eh? Those against? Okay, the motion is carried. So putting it to the vote. All of those in favour of the recommendation? Am I doing it correctly? We haven't done that before. Those against? The motion is carried. We're against. Yeah. Okay, councillors, we can have this sort of conversation as we move into closed council at 23. So someone to move, we move into closed. Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Britton. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Carry on your conversations.
the screen.
Okay, councillors, coming out of closed session, somebody to move the table that is displayed right now is what was discussed in closed session. Moved by Councillor Britton, seconded by Councillor Palmer. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We end today's meeting at 24, with the next council meeting at 25, being held here at 1 p.m. on the 28th of November. 2:42 is the close time. Thank you, councillors.